We're running a little short on time, so I'm going to speed run this. But remember, I'm going to give you a link later on for the slides, so my apologies if I go a little bit too fast. Transatlantic growth, this was our forecast up through 2019, and we knew there was going to be a dip, and we thought there was going to be a rebound. Since then, we've had 4 additional years of data, and there was indeed a rebound, but it wasn't quite as fast as what we thought. And as a consequence, and for various other reasons I won't get into, we've decided to cool off our forecast just a little bit. Not a lot, 36% CAGR to 29% CAGR in this forecast period. But the consequences are fairly profound. Across the Pacific, we've also decided to go with a slightly more conservative forecast based on some of the model inputs. Not as much, 37% CAGR to 34% CAGR. Still extremely rapid growth. 29% doesn't sound like a lot, but remember this exponential growth function. In terms of absolute volumes, it is a ton of capacity that we're going to need. So let's translate that. Here is the amount of capacity needed over time. Due to our time constraints, I'm not going to go into this too much, but translate this to number of cables. It's going to dip, we think, because this is cumulative cables across the Atlantic. There will be some cables that will be retired. But you can see over this forecast period, we still think we need 18 cables. That, in fact, may be too much for the industry to handle. It's a lot. But probably doable, especially given some of the technological advances that have been discussed here at this conference. A lot of discussion about SDM, especially multi-core. It seems a lot more promising now than it did 4 years that we'll be able to make 1 petabit by the end of the decade, maybe even before if we needed to. And 2 petabit cables is within the realm of reason. So this is looking good now. Since then, I've expanded the Atlantic view to do the same thing for the Pacific, intra-Asia, and US Latin America. And for thinner routes, I've assumed that older cables will get replaced on a 1-for-1 basis right around the time of their likely retirement, 25 to 27 years. But again, we don't exactly know when that is. And here again, we see cumulatively a slight dip, and then it grows over time. How much is this in terms of incremental growth? This is the real key, because we have constraints in terms of number of kilometers we can survey every year, number of kilometers we can manufacture for cables, and number of kilometers we can install. We think there's going to be a slight cooling off, but I want to give a lot of caveats here, because this looks like a scary chart probably if you're in the industry thinking telegeography says that we're headed for a bust. That's not really the case. The next couple of years, 2023 and 2024, this is based purely on announced projects. We think there's a slide that, from 1 year to the other, because RFS dates tend to migrate into the future as dates are not met and likely go into here. Here's some really weird model outputs. We don't actually think there's going to be, 5 kilometers of cables built in 2030. That's just what the model said. That's how it came out. More likely, instead of going up and down, it's going to be kind of smeared across. And we had some really conservative inputs to the model. For example, for the huge routes, we only assumed that the cables would be built just in time. That never happens. You actually build 2 years in advance. So there's going to be much faster growth than what we're showing. However, so it may be more like in this area. It's probably not going to be quite as fast as what we saw in the last year until we get into the later years. Again, though, that is assuming that we're going to move to 1 petabit per second cables in the very near future.